Okay, just a quick update. I've made several adjustments on both sides and I was wrong. It pulled to the right, which means the left one was working and the right one wasn't. So adjusting the left one, although helped with the way the handle reacted, made it actually worse. It actually pulls even a little harder to the right than it did. However, I noticed that when I was trying to make a hard right turn where I actually pulled the right stick backwards and the left one forwards, it was actually spinning the right tire backwards. But I have very little forward momentum from the right tire. And so after aligning everything up with the best I could and lubing up the chains and everything like that, what I found is I don't have very good reverse on the left side and I don't have hardly any forward on the right. That uses the same cone and that's the bottom cone. So the top cone, which I'm going to replace them both because I have them both, but basically the top cone seems to be doing what it's supposed to because I have really good forward on the left and very good reverse on the right. So that's my conclusion, is that the bottom cone is junk. And so I don't know that I'll make a video of actually pulling the unit, because there's actually quite a bit to it and it's not hard, it's just there's quite a bit of if I remember, because you have to unhook the emergency brake on both sides, you have to unhook both the front handle, the handles to move it back and forth. These chains, the guard on the other side is not only broke, but your throttle and choke, your key switch, everything hooks to that has to be unhooked, and then there's some bolts at the bottom. But basically the drive assembly there in the center you see actually stays in one piece till you pull it apart. So I don't remember what bolts are what. I'm literally going to have to look all this over. Of course, unhook the battery first, then go from there. And I forgot, the seat on this older unit, the seat safety switch only stops the blades from disengaging. I was actually able to start it with an on and jack and move the handles back and forth, which actually did not show me anything. You really have to drive them to know if they're doing what they're supposed to. So anyway, that's my conclusion. Is the bottom cone is done, and I'm going to go ahead, since I have them both, replace them both. Here's the bag the guy gave me of the extra parts he had. And there's a few pulleys and there's brake drums and everything, but these are basically the cones. They're keyed. Steel in the center, some type of a composite. I'm not really sure what they're made of, but anyway, they're keyed in the center so they slide on the shaft, and then those bolts, there's a big nut and bolt tightened up top and bottom. So these are brand new. I'm going to make use of them and throw them on the floor because what else is new? And anyway, so next time you see it, I may, if it doesn't look like it's that big of a deal, I'll show you, but I'm going to look it all over. First I'm going to pull the seat back off for the third time. And I'll probably get the throttle control and stuff out of the way and then take a look to see how many bolts. I can't remember. It's been, like I said, it's been at least 4 years since I've had the whole unit apart. So anyway, I'll get into it and I'll let you know. Okay, I got it apart. It would have been interesting to watch, but as expected, I ended up having to dissect half of it just to get it apart. And I would have ended up with an hour worth of you not being able to see what I was doing. And if I would have tried a video, it would have been 2 hours. I got to go to work here in a little bit, so there's a couple of little things I will have to look into. One being this idler. Absolutely, it moves, but it doesn't move well. The other one actually moves up and down like it's supposed to, so I'm going to have to pull that apart, see if I can get it loosened up, and then see if the idlers themselves, if I can find those, they don't have those big tracks in them. Maybe they're supposed to be that way for the chain to ride on straight, but I have a feeling that it's about used up. So I want to see if I can find a couple of those. Outside of that, of course, I had to pull the top off. The handles had to come off. The engager had to come off in its spring, and it's kind of a pain to do it, but it's just part of it. So, working on your own stuff, what do you expect? But here's the unit itself. It does have a lot of little things, little moving parts and stuff, but basically it's one little enclosed unit. And because the axle, well, I'm going to call it the axle, but your chain, rides from here down to the wheel. that's kind of an individual unit from this shaft that rides from this chain into your, just that, whatever they call that, flywheel bell. I don't really know what they call that, but whatever the engager is. And so when you go to take this apart, it's basically just a couple of pieces of tubing on both sides, doubled up on this end, not on this end because of all the adjustments you have to have. But basically, like, just you take these 4 bolts out here, a couple over here on this side, and then this piece, you take those 2 springs out, and then your chain will come, and then this whole thing will come out just in one unit. And you take the bolts out, these 4, and then these 2 up here on top that kind of holds all this, and then this will pull away from this side, leaving all this side intact. You don't have to take both sides apart. Now, by moving that out, then that allowed me to take this nut. This is actually the bottom. So your belt from the motor rides on here. So this is actually the bottom. I got turned away. I was taking pictures of it just in case, because I got it out and I got to go to work for the next couple of days, and I'm busy Wednesday all day. So this is Monday, and so I won't be able to get back to it till Thursday. And if I got to order parts, then they may not be here. Now that it's getting close to December, they may not be here in any short order. So it may be a week or 2 before I get to this. So I didn't want to strip this all down. I mean, I could actually take this apart, put the cones in, put it back together, and be done within probably 30-40 minutes. But I have, like I said, I've got to go get ready for work. Anyway, I'll show you doing that. But I just want to show you that it is a part, just basically a naked frame with a motor on there and a deck. Last time I had it apart, the deck was off of it too, and a fuel tank, so there wasn't much left of this thing, last time. But it's easy to work on. It's not, it's a little mower. It's only 30-inch. It's, very little safety devices added into these compared to like the new ones that you can't sneeze without it shutting down. But there are some things that are, that do wear. It's kind of a pain. The only thing that's actually missing on this mower is a little battery cover. There's a little box that kind of covered up that hole there where that battery goes. But I mean, even the seat, although it's that bag sat there and it leaked a little oil out of it, the seat's not even tore up. It's not it's not cracked or deformed or whatever, which is pretty rare, especially on something now that's over 25 years old. So, but anyway, I'm gonna get out of here, and next time you see it, I'll be pulling that section apart there and replacing those cones. I'm not sure what you're going to be able to see, because I'm going to have to move this thing around to take it apart. But I said you really only need to take one side apart to get to the center section. But there's some things that have to come apart because it's sort of bolted together in such a way to work in conjunction with each other. So even though there is a dead separation between the left and the right side, because of the way the thing moves, it still has to be hooked together, like where the rod's hooked together. Then there's a couple of pieces of tubing at the back side that holds everything together in one unit. But the center section that I need, that the bearings are in and the cones are attached to, one side will stay kind of untouched except for kind of one basic bolt or two, and then this side will just start coming apart piece by piece. So the first thing I want you to see, part of the adjustment that I couldn't show you yesterday until it was clear out. I'm not even sure if you're seeing it. Yeah, sort of. You've got a spring both sides, top and bottom here, and what that does is by adjusting the tension on each side of the spring, that moves these drums or hubs or whatever you want to call them. I want to call them hubs for better light, because I really don't know what they are. It moves them up and down to center those so that it's not rubbing on one side of this or the other. Because if you got one too tight and it's rubbing, like this side over here is rubbing on this bottom one, for instance, every time you start it up, it's always got a drag on one side. And so what you want to do is you adjust those springs. It's not real heavy, but it's digging into my tabletop. By adjusting these springs, it allows us to turn, and it's not touching the top or bottom. This one I hear is touching a little bit, so something is not round. But you can see when it did touch it, it also is grabbing the your cone and actually turning it. So it was out of adjustment a little bit one way or the other, and I could probably mess with a little bit and get it out, because there's some other fine adjustments here and there to make that go away, but it is touching at this point. And I may have it in too tight too. So there's adjustment, like I said, front to back, to touch evenly or to a space, and then there's a adjustment to make it not touch stuff it's not supposed to. But one of the first things I know has to come apart, because they are attached together in the center, is where those, mind you, it's upside down now, is where those rods, man, it won't stay still, is where these rods attach, because it's actually attached, this is, this lever is attached to this side, this lever is attached to this side, but they're both together through one bolt. So I do have to take that loose, and well, that's not the size I thought it was. No big deal. Anyway, so we're going to start there. The nut is in terrible shape. That would have been easier to do on the unit. Most everything on this has locked nuts, so like I said, it doesn't fall apart easy. I'm just going to leave it together for now until I can. And then the next thing, because now this has to separate from this rod that you adjust. I showed you some adjustment on one of the other videos. Has to come loose, and I'm going to leave this nut where it's at, because this just needs to slide off, so it kind of gives me a reference. I'll probably have to change it anyway. There's so many adjustments that are going to have to be made, and I'm sorry my arm is in the way, but like I said, well, that won't work either. I've got my ratcheting wrench, but it won't fit around that. Then it's remembering where all the nuts and bolts go. That's why it's a good idea to get lots of pictures. There's some videos on these, I'm sure. I'm not really sure. I haven't looked at it. It's been a few years. I wish there was an easy way. I do need to take that nut off of that. Well, it's been a while since I've had one of these apart. This is that spring adjuster I was talking about a minute ago, because that has to slide off. Okay, now there's 4 bolts here, and there's 2 here. One of them's already out because of the shield or whatever it was I had to do. There's also 2 springs here that are attached from this to that also have to come out. There's a pair of pliers here. Once everything's loose, it may even move together enough that we could, if they're really tight or you don't want to break one or whatever, because these things are pretty decent springs. One of these, some of these have already been loosened, just for the simple fact that I had to take that shield off where the spring was. They kick the camera too while I'm not doing anything. Most of them bolt. A couple of these had nuts. This is one of them that did. This is the rest of that shield that was on that side. It was broke. I may try to weld that together, mostly just for vibration, sound, you know, purposes. And kick my lot over. And even though there was a nut on the end of this, it's a long bolt. And the nut and stuff's over there because it goes all the way through. And these don't have nuts on the other side. This bottom one does, I think did. Yeah, it did also. Well, you can look at the other side too, if you only taking one side apart at a time. Again, don't get carried away. You don't need to do both sides by doing this. Replacing the bearings or that center shaft is wore or the cones. You do not have to strip this whole thing apart. Both sides. You just don't have to do it. Again, this is that shield that's. Okay. Here's one more. I gotta go to work here in a little bit. This board sitting there in the house. It is so cold. I think it's 40. Not sure what the wind chill is. Sun's out, but it is. It is cold. Throw my tools on the floor. It was cold last night. Okay. As soon as I did that, I felt it something give here. So carefully. Mind you, that eyelet I was talking about, that you can't see probably, that I was, with that nut I took off here. The only thing that took these two together is the adjuster that I've showed you on a previous video, that nut that kind of adjusts the back side of this drum, and then the chain. Right now that's pretty, and then this eyelet. It's the only thing that's holding stuff together, and it should, besides the chain, slide apart. Once I can get that moved, if I can get it off that eyelet. I may have to pull that clear out of there. Now that I'm thinking about it, I cannot remember if I had to do that before or not. I could loosen the bolt and just pull this all out as one unit. Maybe that's what I ought to do. I think I can do that. But I got to get these bolts off here. I don't know if you're seeing them or not. Yeah, I may just try to do it that way. Last time I took it apart, kind of one side at a time. And there's springs in here too. I'll try to show those to you. It's kind of a pain. One side's got a spring top and bottom. The one I'm taking apart, the other side's got a piece of rubber with spring. I think it's in the center of it, but I really can't tell. Now what's going to be in my way is, because I don't have the whole thing loose, is that spring I took out. That nut, for that double spring adjustment I was talking about. I'm not sure what I'm going to get into here. Yeah, I'll have to remember that if that's how I'm going to do it, because that's kind of a pain. But it did come apart without much. Again, they're not hard to work on. It's just remembering where everything goes, and what bolts to take off, what bolts you don't have to take off. There's just a lot of things. Okay, let's see if I can stand this up without losing anything. Those are those two springs. They're kind of non-adjustable, and they go in between there. That frame, and keep this thing on this end centered, because again, this is the adjustment. Let's see if you're even looking at it. Yeah, sort of. This is that adjustment that moves that drum I was talking about yesterday. There is a nut there, I promise, and then it just pushes against there. That thing has got a shoulder on it, so as you adjust that bolt, and then those 2 springs I took out is what keeps it pulled together, those 2 smaller springs a minute ago. Again, there is a lot to this. It's not hard, there's just a lot to it. And what that did there is that has allowed me access to the center, and I didn't even think about that. To pull that out, do I have to take that clear out of there? I do, but is that attached? I'm talking to myself, I know. All right, let me get these 2 bolts out here, and hopefully that'll allow, I'm not sure yet what this is going to allow. Those okay, that did allow that to come out of there, and I figured it would. Just have to be careful and remember how it went in this way. Okay, this is basically it. This is the center section. I've had this out before because both these bearings were bad, and I did not have the new cones at the time. This is the top cone, which worked. This is the bottom one, which did not. I really am not seeing like, this is what's wrong, but it was obvious that that's what was going on. So when I get the next video going, I'm going to pull these nuts off, and like I said, these are keyed. I know you're not really looking at it. Both of these, I assume this thing too, but this is both those are keyed. It didn't seem like it was really hard to get off there, but I got to be careful not to destroy those bearings since they are, they don't have any hours on them. But I don't want to leave this thing apart too long, just for the simple fact that I won't remember how to put it back together. So give me a minute and we'll go from there.